Welcome to Horrible Fates, where the most unexpected and tragic endings to seemingly ordinary lives are examined. We will take some time to explore the darkness that can lurk just beneath the surface of everyday existence. Welcome to The Cellar. The Great Molasses Flood, also known as the Boston Molasses Disaster, occurred on January 15, 1919, in a North End neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. Now, before we dive into the events, let's first talk a little bit about molasses. Molasses is a thick, dark syrup produced during the sugar-making process. Sugarcane is first crushed, followed by the juice that is extracted. The juice is then boiled down to form sugar crystals, which are then removed from the liquid. The viscous brown syrup left after removing the sugar from the juice is called molasses. This process can be repeated several times, resulting in different types of molasses. Molasses itself can be fermented to produce ethanol. The process involves diluting the molasses in water to reduce the sugar concentration to about 8 to 10%. If needed, ammonium salts are added. Then, yeast is added to the solution, and during the final process, sucrose is converted into ethanol. The Purity Distilling Company, located near Keeney Square, is the home of today's story. The facility held large amounts of molasses, which were offloaded from ships using the harborside commercial street tank. The molasses was then stored on site before being transferred by pipeline to the Purity Ethanol plant, located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The tank that held the molasses was a massive structure, standing 50 feet tall, or 15 meters, by 90 feet in diameter, or 27 meters. At the time of the incident, this massive tank could hold up to 2.3 million gallons of molasses. It was January 15th, 1919. The temperature had been extremely cold throughout that month, but on this day, it had risen above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or 4 degrees Celsius. Just a day earlier, a ship had arrived and delivered a fresh batch of molasses. In order to reduce its viscosity for transfer, the molasses had been heated up significantly. It is believed that what transpired next was due to the thermal expansion of the older, much colder molasses when combined with the warm, fresh molasses. It was now 12:30 p.m. Workers at the facility were engaged in their daily routines. Some were taking their lunch breaks and enjoying the brief warmth the day had provided. Unbeknownst to everyone, things were about to take a catastrophic turn. The ground began to shake, a deep rumbling followed by a thunderous clap that echoed from the tank that was holding the 2.3 million gallons of molasses. Onlookers in the area heard what they could only describe as machine gun fire as rivets shot out of the tank one by one. Before anyone could react, the tank gave way, and a rush of sweet-smelling air swept through the area. This sudden rush of air began tossing people around like small pieces of dust in the wind. At the same time, a truck was thrown with great force directly into the Boston harbor. The initial rush of air was then followed by a torrent of molasses, which devoured everything in its path. It was as if a volcano had just erupted, and the hot liquid magma was instead replaced with thick, sweet, sticky molasses. Now, to provide some further context, the density of molasses is approximately 1.4 metric tons per cubic meter, or 12 pounds per US gallon. This means the molasses is 40% more dense than water. Consequently, the molasses possessed a considerable amount of energy. The collapse of the tank would transform this energized molasses into a 25-foot or 8-meter high wave traveling at speeds exceeding 35 miles per hour. Entire buildings were swept away from their foundations. What made matters even more dire was the temperature outside. Once the initial wave of molasses had passed, it gradually became extremely viscous, trapping numerous people caught in the initial surge and making escape nearly impossible. The debris carried in the first explosion crushed many, while others were ensnared in the sticky substance and drowned due to their inability to break free. Tragically, 150 people sustained varying degrees of injuries, while 21 individuals, along with numerous horses, met their gruesome end on that fateful day. In the aftermath of the disaster, 116 cadets from the USS Nantucket arrived at the scene first. Without any hesitation, they entered the knee-deep lake of molasses and diligently searched for potential survivors. Soon after, the Boston Police Department, Red Cross, Army, and Navy personnel joined the efforts, contributing to the search for survivors while others tended to the wounded. A makeshift hospital was established on site, with doctors, surgeons, and nurses working tirelessly throughout the night and the following morning. For 4 days, all efforts were made to save as many lives as possible. Numerous bodies were so ensnared in the molasses that they could not be identified. Soon, the search was called off, and it would take another 3 to 4 months before a few more bodies were discovered within the waters of Boston Harbor. The overall cleanup process took weeks, with numerous volunteers contributing to the daunting task. In the aftermath of the tragedy, 119 residents filed a class action lawsuit against the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, which had acquired Purity Distilling a couple of years earlier in 1917. This was one of the first class action suits in Massachusetts and has since been widely praised for paving the way for modern corporate regulations. After a long 3 years of court hearings, the company would ultimately pay out $628,000 in damages, which is roughly $10.6 million in 2023 when you adjust for inflation. It's reported that families of victims received around $7,000 each, which is roughly equivalent to around $118,000 today. The reason for why this tragic event occurred isn't 100% clear, but after a thorough investigation, there were several factors that are believed to have contributed to the event. One belief is that the tank had been leaking since the very first day it was filled back in 1915, while numerous reports of poor construction in almost every facet of the tank's design have been pointed to. No matter the reason, 21 people lost their lives in this tragedy. Now, I have covered numerous cases involving horrible fates, and this one is by far one of the most terrifying ways to have your life extinguished. As always, I want to send my deepest condolences to anyone that lost someone or was involved in any way with the Boston Molasses Disaster of 1919. A big thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content I make here on the channel, then please hit the like and subscribe button. YouTube seems to be suppressing my channel as of late, so a simple like and comment would go a long way in helping the algorithm push my video. Also, you can check the description box below and find the link to my merch store and a link to my membership tier for the channel. For only $2.99 a month, you can help support my channel further, and you get some cool perks to go with it. One of those perks is having your name listed here in the end of each of my videos. So a big thank you to each and every one of my Cellar Dweller members. Also, if you'd like to submit a real-life scary story of any kind, please do so using the email I have linked in the description box below. As always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to help support the channel is greatly appreciated. And until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into the cellar.